Kirsty Cameron, costume designer for The Power of the Dog. This is Jane Campion's first film in 12 years. How did you come aboard this project?
I actually pitched for it. Jane approached me, or she approached me and then asked me to pitch, and I did, which was a really great experience. It kind of gave me like a great kind of entry point and beginning into working on the film, and obviously she liked what I pitched. So yeah, it was very exciting because I have huge respect for her as a filmmaker.
So what exactly drew you to the project, and what did you pitch her?
She drew me to the project. Jane, I mean, I just, I saw Sweetie, which was her first film in the 80s, I think, and loved it. And A Portrait of a Lady, and she's just such a force. And I loved In the Cut as well. And of course, since then, recently she's been making the Top of the Lake series over in this part of the world. So she drew me to it. Plus I read the book and it's just extraordinary. It really, really is worth reading. Anybody reading it's a fantastically written book, and the script is a very economical and beautiful kind of telling of the story. So yeah, all of those things. And I just kind of went into it really, and tried to go underneath it and underneath the characters, and that's what I spoke about. And I did a lot of image referencing and sort of mood feeling, and yeah, and here we are.
Yeah, well, you've worked on a Western before, right? Slow West with McPhee. Yeah, so how did these two compare?
Yeah, I know it was cool and weird to work with twice on two films that involved horses and hats and boots and things. I loved Slow West. Was amazing working with John McClane, who's an English director, and came out here to make the film with Michael Fassbender, obviously, and Cody. They're kind of really different tonally, the two films. But I think what Slow West gave me, because we made pretty much not like 90% of that costume, all of the, as we often do. I was just lucky at the time in New Zealand, it was very slow. There wasn't really much going on, and I was able to employ some really great textile finishers and sewers and stitchers and pattern cutters, which perhaps might not have been possible under busier times with that budget. So that sort of stood me in really good stead, I think, for making, for the work that we did for The Power of the Dog, in terms of making all the kind of the cow hands, clothes, and fills, well, pretty much everything. But it just kind of gave me a really good way into working with the canvases and breaking them down, and the dyeing and the sort of the details really. So yeah, there was definitely a good connection there. I think it put me on a good foot.
Well, the looks for all four main characters are so distinct, and it told you so much about them, especially the three men. And the film is, about masculinity and toxic masculinity, and they're like three different representations. So how did you approach each of their looks?
I think that, to be really honest, it's really there. It's really there in the book. It's really there in the script. And it's like clothing is quite a sort of has quite a presence in both the script and book, in terms of kind of construction of self. Phil's sort of in a sort of fear of his own sexuality, and has sort of this armor that he creates, masculine armor that he creates, which is kind of like, and is in the way he wears his clothes as a sort of second skin. And the kind of sound of his boots on the stairs in the house, and that sort of tension that happens from his personality, which is also very much embedded in his kind of appearance. And the same with Peter, you know, that this kind of restraint, I guess. And I think that's, and you know, restraint is something I employed, you know, majorly in the film, obviously with all the male characters. Their clothes almost become a little bit like uniforms. But that is all in the book and the script. It was really just kind of like listening to that and pulling it out and working with the actors as to how to make that work with them so that they could embody the costumes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, in Phil's case, it really is like his clothes are his uniform because it's like a plot point in the movie. Like he doesn't bathe, like he doesn't shower, like he like
Yeah,
lives
yeah,
in his
yeah.
clothes, and they're often dirty. So I was, what went into like distressing the clothes too after you make them?
Oh, huge amount of work. Yeah, which I love. I really, really love that whole aspect of costume design. I love, you know, what you can do with, and that's where canvases, like working in this kind of time period, or not, or just working with workwear really allows you sort of great freedom to, because you're using canvases and fabrics that are quite robust. So you can do so much with dyeing and then sort of painting them out and sanding, and so a lot went into it, so much. And I had really great people and who did that. Dan was our breakdown person, and yeah, couldn't have done it without him.
He also wears these like really humongous woolly chaps in the movie.
Yeah,
So what went into those?
we made those actually. So we did, Emily, who assisted me, and I did a trip to LA, and we went to the costume houses. This was in the early pre-production. And we sort of, that was one of the things that we knew we'd have to get out of LA was the chaps, and obviously some boots and hats. So we sort of did a really good pull and sort of study of the chaps and bought a couple of pairs back. But Phil's ones, and there's another pair in the film, a pale pair that we actually made, had a fantastic leather worker, Helen, who did, you know, we made a lot of the belts and a lot of the spurs, and yeah, and those chaps, which became not the leather ones that he wears, but definitely the sheepskin ones. So of course in New Zealand we have a lot of sheep, so that's wasn't hard to find, but again, just breaking them down to get the texture right, and yeah, dirty enough, you know, daggy.
They're definitely eye-catching. Well, Kirsten Dunst's character Rose, like her character, it's, you know, she herself is very distressed. You know, she gets bullied by Phil, but it's funny because like once like the clothes she wears, they have more color to them, while like the men were like darker or like muted or like white tones, and she has like that lovely gold dress at the dinner as well, and then
Yeah.
like the red sweater. So what went into like her aesthetic?
Well, Rose has this sort of trajectory of like starting off, of course, at the Red Mill, where she's really, you know, not exactly threadbare. She's proud, but she has very little. And when she marries George, of course, she suddenly gets an expense account of sorts, and Phil's, you know, her sort of desperation and despair, which Phil just is manipulating and building upon, sort of throws her into buying. And you know, it's almost again this kind of using clothing as a kind of construction of self, and you know, putting all of her angst and anxiety into buying more lingerie. And in terms of color, I mean, I think we always talked about her being the color in the film in a sense, even though it's often really quite soft. She does bring that sort of feminine presence along with that bedroom, which used to be the gents, old lady and old gents room with the sort of pink wallpaper. And early in the conversations, I remember sitting around on the floor in my studio with Grant, the production designer, and Ari and Jane and Tanya, the producer, and we were trying to nut out how to use color, and we decided to just use like 5 colors in each scene. that would not the same colors through the film, but to really restrict our palettes for each scene. And so Rose is quite a big part of that, obviously. And she does provide that color in many of the scenes. Yeah.
Yeah. And finally, what goes into a good cowboy hat?
Or a lot of anxiety. No, we had a lot of hats made here by Hills Hats down in Wellington, actually, and we also, of course, bought some back and bought some internationally. But I think it's really, it's about shape, it's about proportion, and it's about the way it sits on the head, and it's just about the actor being able to own it.
Yeah, you need that confidence, like Phil does. It's like, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, his hat is sort of battered and but there's just something, you know. I mean, Benedict walked into that costume and he needed to know, obviously, that he could really, really own it, because he had to wear it every single day for, you know, 6 weeks or 7 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever it was. So yeah, his hat's, you know, it's like a sort of security blanket.
Yeah, and a lot of cowboy swagger in that hat. So
yeah, he's just got a lot of swagger, hasn't he?
Kirsty, it was great speaking with you. Thank you so much for your time. I will see you
Oh,
back in a
thank
little bit.
you.